Greetings, fellow Watford fans, and Happy New Year. Omar here with another Orns 10-minute take on Norwich City 0, Watford 1. Watford start 2023 with a win, a much-needed win for Watford as they defeated the Canaries at Carrow Road. And then now, Watford stretch their unbeaten run at Carrow Road to over 6 years. That's right, it's been that long for Watford without defeat at Carrow Road. And Watford needed this game in the worst way. It seems during the time that Watford have played over the last few years that their most important victories have come against Norwich City. Let's look back, shall we, to earlier this season. Watford desperately needing a win after losing in midweek to Swansea at home, got a win against Norwich City on Saturday night with a 2-1 victory there. And, of course, needed, not reminding, of course, I'm sure you remember this, from the 2021 championship season when Watford were on the road trying to chase Norwich City and looking for a solidifying time in the automatic places, getting closer to promotion. They needed to get a win against Norwich to try to fend off the challenges for the automatic promotion spots. You might remember that in 2021. It was April of 2021, indeed, when Dan Gosling's goal was the only goal at Carrow Road that got Watford in a empty stadium during the early part of the pandemic to a 1-0 victory at that time. And so some of the biggest wins that Watford have had over the last few years have come against Norwich City, going back to 2020 in the first game in charge for Isisco Munoz. Remember that game on Boxing Day of 2020 when Ismaila Sarr scored the only goal of the game for Watford against Norwich at the Vic in that game in December 26th of 2020. So, as I say, the most important games have come against Norwich City, and I'll go back to one more game. It was the first win of Watford's season in the Premier League. You may remember that from a few years ago when Watford had not won a single game in the Premier League on their way to what would end up being relegation in November of 2019 when they went to Carrow Road on a Friday night and beat Norwich City by a score of 2-0. Remember, Gerard Deulofeu scored the first goal in the first minute or two of that game, and then Watford would go on and score a second. Andre Gray, the goal scorer, as well that night. So that was in 2019. That was on a Friday night, and that game again at Carrow Road on this particular occasion. But again, the point being is that some of the most important wins Watford have had in recent years have come against Norwich City, whether home or away. And that was a big one today for Watford as they defeated the Canaries. And Watford played better than Norwich did overall. They had more chances, they had more shots on goal, they had a better sense of the game in midfield, controlled the midfield very well through Bacunia and from Gaspar playing out of position. Gaspar outstanding considering he was playing out of position. The adaptability of this Watford side today meant everything, and that was the reason that Watford won this game. They adapted well. They fought against adversity. This was a character-building performance today, a character-building win, and this really was, I think, one of Watford's best displays of the season. When you consider the circumstances and the magnitude of this game, this team that had been dreadful and missing in action the last couple of games, we absolutely slated them as Watford supporters for the very poor effort and no-show that they did in both these last two games against Swansea and before that Millwall. This team with their backs against the wall, injuries all over the place, 13 different Watford players now currently out, including 3 more today. This Watford side still found the resilience and the character and the courage and all the rest of it and the fortitude to get a win at Carrow Road against a very, very difficult Norwich side, although I don't think Norwich played particularly well today. They did have chances, did Norwich, but they did not really cause trouble to Daniel Bachmann. They had a couple of good set pieces that just went past players, but Watford overall were able to stem the tide. The defense was excellent today, but when you consider everything that was going on here, the poor performances, the injuries, the red cards, all the rest of it, plus the fact that Watford were losing ground to the league leaders Burnley and to the second place automatic team Sheffield United, this was a win of immense magnitude. This was, to me, the most important win so far this season for Watford, coming off of those two performances. And I'll tell you, the three C's today that will really resonate, the three C's: commitment, courage, and character. Those are the three C's for Watford today: commitment, courage, character. And they showed all three today. All of these players from top to bottom displayed a lot of grit and maturity and showed you that under adversity, they are a tough bunch. And that is the kind of performance that we should see every week. And this team today really, really did show that they do care. I had questioned that over the last few games, and of course, some of these other performances that were absolutely abominable. Did this team care? Because the last couple of games, they clearly did not. Today, they showed you that they really did. Keenan Davis was outstanding before he had to go off with the injury that he got. Keenan Davis was at that point the man of the match, but of course, could not continue. And there are lots of man of the match candidates, and I could call on a few names. James Morris. I thought that Mario Gaspar was superb in midfield in that adapted role that is not his position. I also liked how things were going in terms of the defense overall. Francisco Sierralta was superb. Christian Cabaselli, very good as well. And Craig Cathcart, the three backs in the three at the back, I thought were all very, very good indeed. And the grit of Daniel Bachmann, who was getting smashed about today, managed to keep a clean sheet. It's the 8th clean sheet now under Slaven Bilic, and Watford will be getting some help in the right back area. I thought Jeremy Ngakia, after a slow start, developed and grew into the game and made himself proud. I thought he defended and played very well in the second half in particular. And look, this team has a thin squad. We know that. It's been a thin squad all season before the season even began. I've talked about that forever here. But Watford have now signed a right back named João Ferreira. We don't know when the club itself will officially announce this, but that is what I've been hearing from a numerous number of Watford supporters and Watford sources, people who have following particular people on social media who have said this. I've got no reason to disbelieve it, but as of now, as I record this, no word yet from the club officially. I suspect this will be made official, whether it's later on in this day or perhaps tomorrow, that they will have made this official. And João Ferreira comes from Benfica. He is a right back. He also can play right midfield, and he is, I think, 21 years of age, and I think he would fit the bill. This is the kind of player that Watford should have got in the summer. We were talking about some of the candidates that were out there. The lad from Queen's Park Rangers, I forget his name at the minute, who would have been available, and QPR got him. We talked about this ad infinitum about the right back situation. But that is how that goes, and Watford will have another right back. But Watford's focus, first and foremost, has to be this game and what is a character boosting win. Now, the only backdrop and the only setback, of course, is the injuries, and also the fact that the game that they next play in the championship isn't for 12 more days. And we saw how Watford reacted to many days off before when we talked about the game against Millwall. So that's going to be a particular test. We'll see how Watford bounce back. Another home game that would be against Blackpool, who they need to owe for revenge after their 3-1 defeat to them earlier on this season. But the next season, of course, is next week, or this weekend, is the actual FA Cup semi-final. FA wishful thinking. FA Cup third round game at Reading in another championship battle, but that will be against the championship side Reading in the FA Cup third round. Now, I don't think Watford should even bother with the FA Cup. They've got to focus on getting players healthy and getting this team ready for the game against Blackpool, who sit in the bottom 3 of the championship table as of this moment. Now, look, the other thing I want to say about this game today, besides an excellent team-wide performance, and I really would say that the team is the man of the match today, more so than any one individual, is the fact that Watford answered the bell whenever they were getting some pressure from Norwich. They were able in the defense to soak it up very well indeed. You saw the way that defense composed itself today. Very few scares in front of Daniel Bachmann, although there was one or two close calls, but generally speaking, Daniel Bachmann and the defense were completely covered today. They did a yeoman's work, and I think one of the big reasons was the midfield. The midfield, I thought, commanded so well today. The sense of control and balance in that midfield and park really made a difference as Watford were going forward all the time into Norwich's box, and that was because the midfield balance was definitely got right by Bacuna and by Gaspar, the two of whom worked very well together. They were in step and in locked and in cohesion, And because of that, it certainly helped the way Watford's attack went. Keenan Davis on the right side was a very good move as well. And you saw the difference in how he presented himself in this game. Very lively going forward, supplied a load of crosses in. I think James Morris's crosses were very good as well on the left side. And I think James Morris makes you forget about Hassan Kamara, doesn't he? I mean, really, Hassan Kamara has not had the best of seasons. And look, first of all, he was played out of position under Rob Edwards, and now his discipline continues to bite back in the backside for him, and he's going to miss yet another game. I heard somewhere that it was 4 games he's missing, but certainly he's missing 3 at least, and he missed his second of those in this game against Norwich, and he'll miss the next game. And I don't know if that's a league game that he misses or the very next game, but whatever, you're without his services now for 3 games. And we're without the services of Keenan Davis and Samuel Carlew and Christian Kabasele for several games now. All 3 have hamstring injuries. And now the question becomes, what is it about this medical staff? The director of medicine at Watford, I think they've all got to be looked at. There's got to be a steward's inquiry here about the way that the medical staff is going about things, because I think whether it's training issues, whether it is to do with the recovery methods that the staff has employed, or whatever it is not working at all this season for Watford in terms of that, because while injuries happen, and injuries happen all the time, sometimes multiple injuries, you can't legislate for this. Something is going on here. All 3 players with hamstring injuries in the same game, and players coming back from injuries and then getting the same injury again within a few minutes, like Raymond a few minutes, hamstring injury there, and then he gets injured again after 4 months off. Something's going on. Are they being rushed back, these players, or is there something else going on? What is going on? The hamstring tightness for Ken Sema, he's been missing now for 2 games, and now 3 more hamstring injuries in 1 game. Something's going on here. And I don't think that this is a normal thing. When you have all of these players getting the same injury in the same game, something's going on. There is something going on with the way these players are being prepared or the way they're being attended to. And I think that the club must address this forthwith and also make sure that this medical staff is up to snuff. We've had issues with the Watford medical team before. Remember, there was a sacking of the Watford medical director back in 2018 under Walter Matsari, and then there was a whole mess around how that sacking happened and why it happened, and if it happened for a particular reason or not. And the bottom line is that we thought that these issues dealing with the medical staff have been dealt with and solved, but obviously they haven't, because for my money, I think that there's a very, very serious problem with how the medical situation is going, and someone at the club needs to be in a position to actually make it very clear that serious changes have to be made with the medical staff and their approach to these players, because you shouldn't be having 3 players going off with hamstring injuries in the same game. It happens. I know it's possible, but the manner in which this happened today, not good for me as far as I'm concerned, not good for the club, not good for the players, not good for anybody who is of Watford persuasion. And so we will see how that goes. But again, it is a very important win for Watford against Norwich once again, who always seem to be the team that Watford beat when the chips go the toughest and they are down the most. A professional performance from Watford, one to be proud of. In fact, it's the most proud I've been of Watford this season, considering all they had to go through here. This was a game that they battled and scrapped and scraped for. They got bruises and they got injuries. They did everything the dirty, hard way as far as championship football is concerned in England. And Watford today showed substance and courage, fortitude and care and determination to get over the line and get the job done. This has been the Orns 10-minute take.